Why did Lena transform every night? What was the secret behind her curse? How would she escape a life filled with fear and secrecy? Let's find out in this tale of magic, love, and bravery. Lena was a beautiful young woman who lived in a small village. She had long flowing black hair and sparkling green eyes that captivated everyone who saw her. But Lena had a strange curse. Every night when the sun went down, she would transform into an old, haggard woman. Her youthful beauty would vanish, leaving her elderly and feeble. When the sun rose in the morning, Lena would transform back into her young self again. She hid this secret from the villagers, terrified they would shun her or accuse her of witchcraft if they knew the truth. One day, word spread that the prince would be traveling through their village. Lena saw a chance to escape her dull provincial life and win the affection of the prince. She waited anxiously by the roadside, hoping to catch a glimpse of him as his royal procession passed. When the prince's carriage rode into view, pulled by magnificent white horses, Lena stepped forward and bowed deeply. The prince was struck by her loveliness and ordered the carriage to halt. "My dear, what is your name?" he asked. "I am Lena, your highness," she replied. The prince was instantly smitten with her. He brought her into his carriage to ride alongside him as they traveled to the castle. He regaled Lena with promises of the life she could have as his queen. Servants to wait on her, mountains of gold and jewels, splendid balls and banquets every night. Lena listened happily, thrilled that her plan was working. Life as the new queen was even more wonderful than Lena had imagined. She wore exquisite gowns and glittering jewels. Dozens of servants attended to her every need. The castle chefs prepared lavish feasts of roast pheasant, honey-glazed hams, and elaborate fruit pies. Each night, the prince would shower Lena with affection, proclaiming his undying love for her. For weeks, Lena managed to hide her nightly transformations from the prince and his household. She made excuses to retire to her private chambers before sunset each evening, not emerging until after daybreak when she was young again. But the strain of keeping her secret was wearing on her. One night, after a long evening of drinking and dancing, the prince was in a particularly amorous mood. He insisted Lena remain by his side instead of going to bed early. As the last slivers of sun faded from the sky, Lena began to panic. She felt the blood draining from her face, her limbs growing stiff and feeble. The prince was baffled by her sudden haggard appearance. Betrayed and angry, he shouted, "Witch, you have deceived your prince." Lena fell to the floor and wept as she transformed fully into a decrepit old woman. The prince summoned his guards to seize Lena and lock her in the dungeon. As she sobbed on the cold stone floor, Lena thought her life was over. In the morning light, she became youthful again, but it was too late. The guards refused to believe it was the same woman. The prince had already pronounced her a witch and ordered her to be burned at the stake. Lena was dragged roughly from the dungeon and tied to a towering wooden stake in the center of the village. Stacks of straw and kindling were piled high around her. The prince watched coldly from a balcony as the executioner approached with a flaming torch in hand. Lena scanned the crowd and saw the villagers glaring at her, spitting curses at the witch in their midst. As the executioner lowered his torch, a howl rang out from the edge of the forest. A massive grey wolf burst forth, charging toward the pyre. The executioner dropped his torch and fled as the wolf leaped over the kindling, using its powerful jaws to tear through the ropes binding Lena to the stake. Lena clung to the wolf's fur as it ran back toward the trees, disappearing with her into the forest shadows just as the prince's archers began firing arrows after them. The wolf carried her deep into the heart of the woods, finally depositing Lena at the entrance to a cave blanketed in soft moss. Lena watched in awe as the wolf began to transform. Its fur retracted into flesh, paws into hands, muzzle into a man's face. The wolf had been a shapeshifter who rescued her. "Thank you for saving me," Lena cried. The man smiled gently. "I could not let an innocent woman die," he replied. "Now rest. You are safe here. Lena recovered slowly in the care of the shapeshifter, who brought her food and sheltered her in the cave. As her strength returned, Lena knew she must move on. The cave was not far from the village, and word would soon spread that the witch had escaped. She sadly took leave of her rescuer and journeyed farther than she had ever been, finally stopping in a bustling port town. Using the little money she had, Lena rented a small room above a tavern, keeping her curse condition secret. She eked out a living by washing dishes in the tavern. She went to bed before sunset and woke at dawn to start her chores, avoiding the tavern patrons at night. But she longed for more than this dreary existence. One day, Lena heard that a traveling fair was setting up on the edge of town. She decided to visit after her morning shift, hoping to forget her troubles for a few hours. Entering the riotous fairgrounds, Lena was amazed by acrobats, dancers, jugglers, and musicians. A fortune teller's tent caught her eye. Perhaps this witch could give insight into breaking her curse. Lena hesitantly entered the candlelit tent. The fortune teller was an ancient, wild-haired woman who studied Lena intently. Then she began to laugh, explaining that she too was afflicted with the same shape-shifting curse. For years, she had scoured mystical texts until she found an enchanted potion to control her transformations. The old crone offered to make Lena a dose of the potion if she would agree to join the fair and be her apprentice. Overjoyed, Lena accepted immediately. For several weeks, she traveled with the colorful troupe, learning about herbs and spells from the fortune teller. On the night of a full moon, the potion was finally ready. Lena drank the bittersweet brew, and that night, she remained young, even after sunset. The curse was broken. Lena's beauty and charm soon made her the star attraction of the fair. Patrons marveled as magical lights twirled around her and doves appeared from her sleeves. Lena was happier than she ever imagined possible, being applauded and appreciated rather than shunned and feared. Months passed enjoyably as the fair traveled to villages and cities across the country. One day, they arrived in the capital for a special performance at the palace. Lena was anxious about being so close to the prince, who had tried to execute her, but the fortune teller reassured Lena that the potion and her new look would prevent the prince from recognizing her. On the night of the palace performance, the fair cast dazzled the prince and his courtiers with their acts. When Lena stepped forward wearing a shimmering gown and feathered mask, the audience gasped. She was enchanting. Her act left the crowd breathless. As Lena curtsied to the cheering nobles, the prince leaped to his feet, offering a bag of gold coins for another show. Lena saw the burning desire in his eyes, and for the first time felt only pity for this man who once meant to end her life. Later that night, she discreetly packed her belongings. Lena decided to leave the fair and make a new life for herself far from the reach of the prince. As the fair wagons departed the next morning, Lena turned back for one last glimpse of the palace. Looking up at the turrets, she smiled softly and then walked on toward the rising sun and her future. Lena gazed pensively out the small cottage window as the first light of dawn crept over the distant hills. A year had passed since she fled the palace and the obsessive prince who had once promised her the moon and the stars. When she left the traveling fair, she vowed never again to perform tricks for the amusement of nobles like a trained monkey in a menagerie. With the gold coins earned from her shows, Lena purchased a secluded cottage near the sea and began a solitary, simple life there. The locals knew her only as the widow Lena. She maintained the fiction that her husband had been a merchant sailor lost at sea to avoid the scrutiny of villagers. They accepted her tale without suspicion or malice. She, in turn, was friendly but guarded, never fully trusting for fear her curse might be exposed. Though the potion allowed Lena to stay perpetually young, she lived in dread that its effects might someday wear off. This morning, like most, Lena decided to walk the winding cliffside path down to the sea. The salty ocean air and cry of circling gulls always soothed her restless mind. But when she opened the cottage door, an unexpected sight gave her pause. A tall, muscular man was approaching on horseback down the narrow lane. As he drew nearer, Lena frowned slightly in puzzlement. The man looked familiar, though she was certain they had never met before. The rider spotted Lena and quickly dismounted, walking his horse the remaining distance. "Good morning, madam. I apologize for the intrusion, but I must speak with you urgently." Lena remained silent, still struggling to place where she had seen his face. The man removed his feathered cap and bowed deeply. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Lord Gareth of Amber Hill. I have come a long way to find you." Lena's eyes widened in shock. Lord Gareth was the wolf shapeshifter who had once rescued her from the prince's pyre. She had not seen or thought of him since that fateful day in the forest cave. "But I do not understand. Why have you been looking for me?" Lena stammered. Lord Gareth smiled gently. "My lady, saving you that day brought light back into my weary soul. Your face, your voice, your essence haunted my dreams endlessly. I had to see you again." Though touched by his words, Lena remained guarded. "That was another lifetime ago. I am no longer the woman you knew." Lord Gareth shook his head. "You are forever embedded in my heart. I have only grown more devoted. If you would permit me, I wish to stay so that we—" Before he could finish, a shriek rang out down the lane. A young boy came running and crying hysterically from the village. Between sobs, he warned of a royal procession approaching fast. The prince had come searching for the missing witch queen. Lena trembled with rage and fear. The vengeful prince would never release his grip on the past. She turned angrily to Lord Gareth. "You must leave at once. I cannot protect you from the prince's wrath." Lord Gareth stood firm. "I swore to stay by your side. Let me take you far beyond his reach. We will find somewhere the shadows cannot follow." Hope and uncertainty gnawed at Lena's soul. Could she trust him and dare to love again? The clatter of hoofbeats interrupted her churning thoughts. The prince's crimson and gold banner came into view. Lena quickly dragged Lord Gareth and his horse into the cottage. She frantically exchanged her dress for a rumpled tunic and cloak. Outside, Lord Gareth swept Lena onto his horse, donning his own disguise just as the royal guards approached. They galloped off down the little used trail behind the cottage that led to the sea. Shouts arose from the lane as the guards spotted the fugitives. Lord Gareth spurred the horse on faster down the rocky cliffside path. The shore was now in view, waves crashing against jutting boulders. Lena felt sick with the impossible choice before her: capture or the violent sea. She heard the guards gaining ground. Grim resignation settled on her face. At the precipice, Lord Gareth suddenly halted and turned the horse abruptly. Before the stunned guards could react, he charged back toward them with Lena clinging behind him. The surprise maneuver created just enough space for them to barely break through the closing circle. Horse and riders shot past onto the open road, racing at a blurring speed toward the pine forest ahead. The stunned prince screamed in anger for his men to catch them, but his voice soon faded into the distance as Lord Gareth and Lena left the coast behind and plunged deep into the shady forest. Eventually, winded and shaking, they slowed to a walk in a remote clearing. Lena turned to gaze at the kind face of the man who had saved her yet again. She smiled cautiously at first, then broadly, feeling hope taking root inside her long-wounded heart. Lord Gareth dismounted and helped Lena down from the horse. They stood in the serene forest, the dense canopy of trees providing a sense of security and shelter from the outside world. "We should keep moving," Lord Gareth said gently. "We need to find a more permanent hiding place before the prince's men regroup." Lena nodded, her mind racing with a mix of fear and hope. She had spent so long running and hiding, yet now she felt a flicker of possibility, a chance for a new beginning with someone she could trust. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Lena and Lord Gareth spoke in hushed tones, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams for the future. Lord Gareth revealed that he had been searching for a way to break his own curse, one that bound him to his wolf form whenever he was near danger. He had hoped to find Lena, not only to save her but to seek solace in their shared struggles. By nightfall, they reached a secluded glen with a small, clear stream and a cave that offered ample shelter. Exhausted, they made a simple camp. Lord Gareth built a fire and Lena prepared a modest meal from the supplies they had brought. As they sat by the fire, Lena looked at Lord Gareth with gratitude. "Thank you for coming back for me. I thought I was destined to be alone forever." Lord Gareth took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "You are not alone, Lena. We will face whatever comes together." The next few days were spent setting up a more comfortable camp and foraging for food. Lord Gareth taught Lena how to navigate the forest and use its resources, while Lena shared her knowledge of herbs and potions. They grew closer, their bond deepening with each passing day. One evening, as the sun set and the forest was bathed in twilight, Lord Gareth turned to Lena with a serious expression. "There is something I need to tell you," he said. "I believe we can break our curses together. I have been studying ancient texts, and I think I know what we need to do." Lena's heart quickened with hope. "What do we need to do?" "We must find the source of the magic that cursed us," Lord Gareth explained. "It is said that there is a hidden grove deep within the forest, where a powerful sorceress once lived. If we can find it, we might be able to reverse the curses." Determined, Lena and Lord Gareth set off on their journey. They faced numerous challenges, from treacherous terrain to wild animals, but their resolve never wavered. Their love and trust in each other grew stronger with every obstacle they overcame. After days of searching, they finally stumbled upon the hidden grove. It was a breathtaking sight, an ethereal blend filled with glowing flowers and a sparkling pool of water. In the center stood a tall, ancient tree, its branches shimmering with an otherworldly light. "This is it," Lord Gareth whispered, "the source of the magic." Together, they approached the tree. As they touched its trunk, a soft voice echoed through the grove. "Who seeks the power of the ancient magic?" "We do," Lena replied, her voice steady. "We seek to break the curses that have plagued us." The voice seemed to consider for a moment before responding. "Your love and bravery have brought you here. To break the curses, you must make a sacrifice. Are you willing to give up the power that binds you to your forms?" Without hesitation, Lena and Lord Gareth answered in unison. "Yes." A bright light enveloped them, and they felt a rush of energy as the magic surged through their bodies. When the light faded, they stood in the grove, feeling a profound sense of relief. They were free, no longer bound by their curses. Overwhelmed with joy, Lena embraced Lord Gareth. "We did it," she whispered, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "We did," Lord Gareth replied, holding her close. "Now we can truly start our lives together." With their curses broken, Lena and Lord Gareth returned to the secluded glen where they had first found refuge. They built a modest home, living in harmony with the forest and each other. Their love flourished, and they found peace in the simplicity of their new life. Word of their happiness spread, and the prince eventually gave up his search, having lost interest in the witch who had once captivated him. Lena and Lord Gareth were finally free to live without fear or secrecy, cherishing each day as a gift. Years later, as they watched their children play by the stream, Lena and Lord Gareth reflected on their incredible journey. They had faced unimaginable challenges and discovered that true love and courage could conquer even the darkest of curses. And so, they lived happily ever after, their hearts forever entwined in a love that transcended time and magic.